Good day, buddies! This is a video that can help you in graphing a sine and cosine function. We are sharing our knowledge about the topic on how to graph sine and cosine. So, keep on watching and join us until the end of this video. To give an introduction, first let us give a simple definition on how to graph a sine and cosine function. The sine and cosine function are used frequently in math, including pre-calculus, calculus, and trigonometry. These classes, as well as almost everyone working in a scientific subject, require an understanding of how to construct and depict these functions. The objective of this video is you to learn how to manually graph the sine and cosine function, as well as how each variables in the common equations affect the size, shape, and orientation of the graphs in this article. We have two topics that is presented here: graphing basic equations and graphing different sine and cosine equations. Giving the definition of how to graph a cosine, first, you need to draw a coordinate plane. Divide it by 4 sections, both sides, and label it from initial to end. And the last is to graph the equation. For further explanation, here's my partner to lead you on how to graph a cosine step by step. So here's the step in graphing cosine. Step 1. Get the period and amplitude. Using 2 pi over b, you will get the period. Step 2. Divide it in 4 parts and label it initial, 1/4, middle, 3/4, end. Cos-intercept, 1/4 and 3/4 way. And the last step, if amplitude is greater than 0, then the maximum at initial and end, minimum at middle. If the amplitude is less than 0, maximum at middle, minimum initial, end.
Let's have an example. Our given is y equals to cos 1/2 x. Now, we will apply the given steps in graphing cosine. First step, get the period and amplitude. To get the period, use the formula 2 pi b. The value of a is 2 and b is 1/2. We will substitute the value of b to get the period, so we have 2 pi over 1/2 and the period is 4 pi. To get the amplitude, we will use the value of a. Amplitude is equal to absolute value of 2 is 2. Now, we have the period and amplitude. Let's proceed to next step. Second step, we will create a graph and we will plot the value we get. The cosine will intercept 1/4 and 3/4 way. Divide the x-axis into 4 parts and label it initial, 1/4, middle, 3/4, end. Third step, analyze if the value of a is greater than 0. Then the maximum of the graph at initial and end, minimum at middle. If the value of a is less than 0, then the maximum at middle, minimum initial and end. Since the value of a is greater than 0, the graph is maximum at initial and end, minimum middle. Always remember, if the given is cosine, it will intersect 1/4 and 3/4 way. Our last step is to draw a graph and make sure it will intersect all the points. The graph will look like this up to the maximum initial, back to 1/4, down to minimum middle, back to 3/4, up to maximum end. Same graph with the other side. And so, we have the graph. Thank you.
Let's proceed in graphing sine function. In graphing sine functions, it's also the same step in graphing a cosine function, but they differ on where the graph intersect. If in graphing cosine, the graph intersect at 1/4 and 3/4 way. Here, in sine, the graphs intersects at initial, middle, and end points. Don't be confused. Always remember, cosine intersect 1/4 and 3/4 way, while sine function intersect initial, middle, and end way. Here is the example of how to graph a sine step by step. So we have the given here, y is equals to sine 1/2 x. Always remember the first step is we need to get the period and also the amplitude. We need to find the value of a and b to us to be able to substitute the given values. Going back, the period has the formula 2 pi over b. We need to substitute the value b to get the period. So we have period is equals 2 pi over 1/2. So our period here is 4 pi. And our amplitude is absolute value of 2 is equals to 2. Our next step is to create a graph. In creating the graph in sine function, we need to divide it into 4 sections. Next is label all the parts. We will label our y-axis as our amplitude, which is 2, and our period is on x-axis. We will label it 4 pi as the value of end, which is endpoint. Half of 4 pi is 2 pi, which is the value of middle point, and half of middle point is the value of 1/4, which is pi, and 1/4 and middle added together, it will be 3 pi, which is the value of 3/4. Next, our value of a is greater than 0, so the maximum value of sine is 1/4 and minimum value of 3/4. Here, we are drawing a point where our graph intersects. So since our value is greater than 0, or our amplitude is greater than 0, we will start with initial up to the maximum, which is 1/4, back to middle, down to minimum 3/4, back to end. In negative side, we will also start with initial, but here, the 1/4 will be the minimum, back to middle, 3/4 will be the maximum, and back to end. So we have the graph. Now we are done on graphing sine and cosine functions. As you notice, we use the same equation or given in graphing sine and cosine functions. We use the same equation or given so that you can better understand the difference between the two graphs or the graph of the two functions. Now I will show you how the graph looks like when the given is negative. Well, there are no difference in graphing with negative sign. It is the only vice versa of each graph when it's negative. So here in cosine function, lately we discussed if the amplitude of sine function is positive, the maximum value is 1/4, right? Here in negative sine function, the maximum will be the 3/4 and the minimum will be 1/4. Sine functions always start at the initial point. Again, if the sine function is positive, the maximum is 1/4. The other side of the graph, the 1/4 will be the minimum. When the sine is negative, the minimum will be the 1/4, maximum at 3/4. The other side of graph, 1/4 will be the maximum and 3/4 will be the minimum. Same in cosine function. So here in cosine function, the only difference here in cosine, if the given is negative, the initial and end will be the minimum. The middle is maximum. As we discussed earlier, when the cosine is positive, the maximum will be initial and end, and the middle will be the minimum. And that's it. I hope you guys learned about what we've discussed about graphing sine and cosine functions. But before I end this video, let me share with you a saying. It is said in Proverbs chapter 1 verse 5, "A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels." Again, we hope you enjoyed learning with us. And here ends our video. Goodbye!